What's up, everyone? Today on Between the Dots podcast, we're talking Leafs, we're talking Sens, we got roster projections for you, we got our predictions, and we got a whole lot more coming up right here, right now on Between the Dots podcast. Let's go. Welcome to Between Dots podcast. I'm Falks.
I'm Kijo.
Together, we're your hosts. We're going to be providing you with expert level analysis on everything to do with the Ottawa Senators, with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and with the NHL. First things first, though, we're going to tell you a little bit about ourselves.
So me and Jake lived together down at school, and we also played hockey together. We quickly learned that the two of us both have a love for hockey, obviously, and Jake with the Ottawa Senators and me with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we love to talk about it, so we figured it'd be a good idea to start a podcast and share it with you guys.
So that's exactly why we started this podcast. We are a family-friendly podcast. Episodes are going to be released weekly every Thursday, and you can listen to us on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Music, Buzzsprout, pretty much wherever you get your podcast listening done. You can also check us out on Instagram, and stuff that's posted on Instagram is going to be like clips and graphics from our show as well. We are a listening podcast, but there is also a video component to it, and you can see that video component if you check us out on YouTube. More than check us out too, you can drop a like, drop comments on our videos and any posts. We'd love to hear from you really about anything that you have to say. It can be a comment or something you want to see next time, or it can even be feedback about our show, so we'd really like to hear it all.
And with that being said, we could potentially run into some technical issues because we're not doing this in a studio or anything, so just bear with us, and we'll try to do our best to get those issues solved, and it should be a good time.
Oh yeah, we're new at this, so we'll be working out the kinks kind of as we go along, but we're excited to do it all, so we're looking forward to it. So now, something else that we're excited about here is we got a little giveaway for you guys early on to celebrate our podcast. So what we're going to be giving away for you guys is one of these hoodies. You got a chance to win one of these. All you have to do is 3 things. First thing you got to do is go to our YouTube channel, subscribe. That's something free that you can do. All you got to do is click that little red button that says subscribe. That's step 1. Step 2, like the video, this video that we've made. And step 3 is share that video on Instagram, social media, on Twitter, on whatever. So to recap the 3 things, subscribe to our channel, like the video on YouTube, and then third thing, share the video on Instagram or Twitter, and that gives you a chance to win one of these lovely, super comfortable sweaters.
Yeah, these we want to give a shout out to Samantha Skanes, who helped us design our logo here that you see on the hoodie, as well as get the hoodies put together. And yeah, no, like Jake said, they're so comfy, and it seems like 3 pretty easy things you can do to get entered into a draw for one of these, and you don't want to miss out on that.
So first things first, we're going to get into our very first ever segment called Week In, Week Out. What we're going to be doing is basically we're going to recap each of our team's week that just occurred, the week coming into this episode. So for me, I'll be recapping the Sens week, and Kijo, he'll be recapping the Leafs week. And then from there, we'll talk about the week looking forward, the week out, and we'll give you the games on tap, what we think may be happening, and this is something we'd like to kind of do throughout the year as well.
Yeah, the first couple of weeks are going to be a little different just because obviously we're just dealing with exhibition games right now. After that, once the season starts, it'll be good, that's for sure.
Yeah, so I'll kick us off. Our weekend for the Sens. So they played 3 games this past week. They're all preseason games. The first one was on Saturday versus Toronto. That was one that Kijo and I both attended in person, and Kijo got the last laugh because the Leafs ended up winning 4-1. For me, a guy that stood out for the Sens that game was Sanderson. He looked really, really solid. He broke up a 2-on-1. He just played good overall. Looked like he belonged, which is a good sign to see. Then the next game, it was a doubleheader that day, a split squad game. So the Leafs played the Sens again in the evening. And the Sens got the last laugh in that one. They ended up winning 4-2, and Tyler Mott had 2 points, a goal and an assist that game, and he's looking like he might be a good signing for the Sens early on. I know it's just preseason, but good sign of things to come. And then the third game that happened was on Tuesday night. That was against Winnipeg, and the Sens didn't dress too many regulars that night. It was basically a Belleville squad, and they ended up losing 5-3. Tyler Mott and Shane Pinto both had 2 points, though. It was a good sign to see, and they were both +2, so another thing to note about that game was Brandstrom dressed that game. So Ottawa held out their top 6 defensemen, and they dressed Brandstrom. So that could be a sign that he's not going to be starting on opening night for the Sens.
Yeah, so like Jake mentioned, those first 2 games, the Leafs took the first one, the Sens took the second game, and then the Leafs had a third game actually just wrapped up not too long ago. The Leafs took down the Habs 3-0 tonight. There's a goal from Nick Robertson as well as Abrazizi. So it's good to see those guys who are definitely trying to get a spot on the roster this year. And again, it's just exhibition, but they're definitely showing what they got early, so that's good. Another thing that I noticed, and it was one of the first things I noticed, is Willie Styles out there in full force with his new tinted visor. That was funny to see. Willie's always doing stuff like that where he's noticed, so that was funny. Even in an exhibition game, it was funny to see that. And then Adam Gaudette as well. He stood out to me. He started on a line with Marner and Tavares, and it looks like off the start they're going to give him some time early in the preseason here to show what he's got. And yeah, I think that those 3 could do well together early here in preseason. And the last thing I wanted to mention was hopefully in the near future, that's why I have it in the week in, week out segment here, is that hopefully the Leafs can get something done with Sandin, because I think that he's a big part of this roster, and him as well as Liljegren are 2 young guys who I think could really take a step forward this year. So I hope they get a deal done quickly, and we can get them over here and get them in training camp.
Leafs also battling some injuries early on too on the back end. Muzzin's a little banged up, and I think it was Jordy Ben went down with a groin injury, it looked like, tonight as well. So they'll definitely be eager to get Sandin signed and back into the lineup. So also Johnny T banged up early on in the season. He's going to miss the first few weeks of the year. So the Buds are looking banged up early on.
Tough one to see early on when your captain goes down before the season starts. But I think better now than midway through the year. So hopefully they can get them all together and get ready for the start of the season. But what's up next on the calendar for the Leafs and the Sens? For the Leafs, they head to Ottawa this Friday. They're actually in Belleville for a game there, another exhibition game. Followed by Monday, they head to Montreal. And we're not looking for a lot out of these games, just all about the guys getting the legs going. And the only thing I am curious to see is what the Leafs, if they'll tip their hand on who their number 1 goalie is going to be to start. I know they're probably going to go with a 1A, 1B with Samsonov and Matt Murray, but they've both played well in the previous exhibition games that they've been in. So it'll be interesting to see going forward how that looks, as well as the injury updates. Like mentioned, Tavares is out. There's a few guys out right now, like Jordy Ben left the game tonight, like Fox mentioned. And just in the coming weeks, it'll be good to see where those guys get to on the injury front, and hopefully they can get healthy in time for the start of the regular season.
Oh yeah. And for the Sens next week, again, we're in Belleville against the Leafs on Friday. On Saturday night, we got a home game at 7 p.m. against Montreal. And then on Tuesday, October 4th, again, we're playing Montreal. That's an away game as well. And that basically wraps up our week in, week out segment. And now we're going to head on over to our next segment, off-season segment, where Kijo and I are going to give you our off-season grades for how we felt the general managers did for each of our teams. I'll start off. I'll give you the off-season grade for the Ottawa Senators. I'm giving them an A- this off-season. Now, I've seen them get graded all the way up to an A+, but I'm giving them an A-, and that's going to be for a few reasons. Pierre Dorian did a great job addressing the need for top six forwards. He brought in two of them with DeBrincat and Giroux. He also addressed the need for goaltending by signing Cam Talbot. But with that being said, he didn't address the defense situation, the need for a top four defenseman, which I think could hurt us throughout the year. We're a little thin on the back end.
A little thin.
Hopefully there's no injuries. But overall, he did a fairly good job. I'm giving him an A- for his efforts. He brings in a 40-goal scorer with DeBrincat. He signs Talbot. He signs Tyler Mott. He also gets contracts done for Josh Norris, signing at $7.95 million per 7 years. And he also gets Stützle done at $8.35 million for 8 years. He also got Matthew Joseph done at $2.95 million for 4 years. So a busy offseason. The only contract he didn't get done was Alex Formenton, which is too bad because he's a crucial penalty killer for us and brings a lot of speed to our lineup. So I'm hoping he gets signed in the near future. But I've heard rumors that it's going to be similar to what Brady Tkachuk's contract dispute was last year, where it might drag on a couple games into the regular season and causing him to miss, all of training camp, all of preseason, and maybe the first couple games. But ideally, we want to get him done, get him back in the lineup as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'm excited for the Sens. Like those DeBrincat and Giroux, those are huge additions, and I think those will be big for their team. The young guys like Stützle and Tkachuk, like those guys will. I think they'll benefit a lot from those guys. And
Oh yeah, absolutely. What's your grade of the Sens for the offseason?
yeah, I thought yours was pretty solid, like B+, A-. I mean, you can't really do much better than they did, other than like you mentioned, be nice to get a top four defenseman there, but I mean, you can only do so much with what you got in the off season as well. So maybe in the mid-season you'll see a move like that if the Sens are in playoff contention or something like that. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And for the Leafs, I thought Kyle Dubas did a great job. I mean, he didn't have a lot of cap space to work with. There were a few additions that a lot of people were questioning, like the Matt Murray signing. Matt Murray's had a few rough seasons, and he's the former Sioux Greyhound, so obviously Kyle Dubas has a good relationship with him, and he likes his former Sioux Greyhounds. Like Michael Bunting is another guy who didn't really know what to expect coming in, and he's been a great fit. Obviously, he's playing with Matthews and Marner, so he's excelling there, and which is good. So yeah, I think Matt Murray, he's could have a bounce back year here and really help the Leafs out. Another guy I'm excited for is Yarncrow. He had a tough playoffs there. He was traded at the deadline to the Flames and didn't really get going. But I think if he gets to Toronto, gets everything set in training camp, he could potentially have a very good year with them. And now with Tavares going down, I think that Yarncrow could potentially pull into that second center role. So that could be good for the Leafs and good for him to get going on the right foot. Then they added guys like Jordy Ben and Victor Mete. They're good NHL defensemen to have in your 7 or 8 spot in case, as you can see, playoffs, there's a lot of injuries. So, or even in the regular season as well, you get 2 defensemen go down and you don't have much behind that, you could be in trouble. So those are good depth signings, as well as Abe Kubel. He brought in another good guy that's really going to help them out, and he also signed Adam Gaudette on a 1-year league minimum deal. So can't really go wrong with a league minimum deal. I mean, if it doesn't work, it's not a lot of money, and I think a guy like Gaudette does have a lot of upside. And the last one, Samsonov. I mean, that guy is Washington didn't really give him much of a chance in my eyes. I mean, he's still a young guy, first round pick. I think that in a 1B role, 1A, 1B, depending on how you look at it, with the Leafs, got a strong team in front of him. I think he could excel. And I think like a B- for Dubas's offseason. I mean, it could have been better, but I wasn't huge on the Murray signing at the start, but I honestly think that once everything gets settled and the guys get going, Murray's could have a bounce back year. So I'm really pulling for that. But yeah, no, B minus is I think where I'm going to go with Kyle Dubas's off-season grades. What do you think, Ross?
I think it's fair considering he's strapped up against the cap a little bit. He's only got so many options. I like the Yarncroke signing that you mentioned. I like the Gaudette signing. Samsonov signing was good as well. Bringing in Jordy Ben as well, another good signing. So losing Campbell for almost the same price as Matt Murray, I think, is what stings the most. But Matt Murray, when healthy, he's a good goalie. He's really streaky. He'll be really hot sometimes. Sometimes he'll be letting in goals from behind the goal line. So you never really know which Matt Murray you're gonna get. Even all the way dating back to when he was in Pittsburgh, he was splitting games with Marc-Andre Fleury, and like he took over in that cup run that they made when they won the Stanley Cup. So that's the pedigree he's sitting on, and if he can get back to that, he can be huge for you guys as well. But it's all a matter of can he stay healthy and which Matt Murray is going to be in goal on any given night. So for me, my grade is a C plus, so right similar to that B minus area that you gave him, just mainly because he is strapped up against the cap. He got Liljegren signed in the offseason, as well as swapping out some pieces and trying to change the puzzle for this team to help get them over the hump. So I think that overall he was okay. Could have been better, like you said, but given the circumstances, he did a decent job. Alrighty, now we're going to get into our projections and predictions. So in this segment, we're going to be giving you our projections for opening night rosters, and then we're going to be giving you our end of the year predictions for where we think the Sens and the Leafs are going to end up in the standings.
So yeah, my opening night roster for the Leafs looks like the top line, obviously one of the best lines in hockey last year, going back with Matthews, Marner, and Bunting. They're a solid line last year, like I mentioned, and wouldn't expect anything different from those guys this year. Maybe a little more chemistry after a whole year of playing together, so look forward to that. As mentioned earlier, Tavares goes down with an injury, and he's going to be out for the start of the season, so that's obviously not good. Your captain goes down before the season even starts. But with the offseason addition of Yarncroke, I think that he could potentially pull into that second line center role to start, at least to fill in for Tavares while he's gone, playing alongside Nylander and Kerfoot. I think they'd be a great second line. On the third line, I think the Leafs are looking for more of an identity from their third and fourth lines last year. Their third line last year was good, but the fourth line didn't really. They were always swapping pieces out, weren't really sure who's going what night, and I just think that an identity would be really good for them this year. So on the third line, I have Kemp with Ashton Reese and Abe Kubel. Those guys, the three of them, they've all got pretty good speed, as well as they're not afraid to lay the body. So I think they can go out there, cause some havoc for the other team, and be a really good third line with the Leafs this year. And on the fourth line, this one I'm a little unsure because with the injuries, and we're not sure who's going to be in and who's going to be out. But I think that Nick Robertson deserves a shot on the opening night roster this year. I think I've had him for a few years now, and he just hasn't really – he's battled some injury issues, and I think that he's got to start on the roster. I don't have him that high up, obviously, him starting on the fourth line, but I think he's got to be there opening night. And then along with Gaudette, like I mentioned before, he's good to have out there as well. He can wheel, he can hit, and then them being centered by Pierre Engvall. Again, I think that's another guy who's battling a small injury right now. But opening night, if those are the forward lines for the Leafs, I'm pretty happy with that, and I think those guys could do some serious damage. That's for sure. With the Leafs D pairs on opening night, the Leafs have most of their D-corps returning, like guys like Riley and Brody, who I have on the top pair opening night, as well as Giordano and Justin Hall on the second pair. Those four guys, they'll what they're gonna bring, and I think that the four of them gel well together as the first and second pair. And then on the third pair, I know Muzzin's had some injury issues lately, so I'm hoping he can have a solid year and stay away from the injuries. But I know there's a bunch already on the D-core that are making it tough for the Leafs, but I also had Jordy Ben with Muzzin, but I think Jordy Ben went down tonight actually with an injury. So I'm not sure if it's Victor Mete that's going to slide into that 6D role on opening night, because Liljegren also has, I believe he's dealing with a hernia issue. So I'm not sure if he's going to be ready for opening night, but hopefully all goes well, and the Leafs can dress the best D core for opening night. That's for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned the injuries. Hopefully, I think Muzzin's supposed to be ready for opening night, but that Jordy Ben injury tonight looked like a weird one. So we'll see if he's ready, and yeah, Sandin as well, if you can get that done, getting him into the lineup. You mentioned earlier a young guy who's looking to maybe make a difference, more of an impact this year. It'd be good to get him in the lineup.
I just think he's asking for more than Liljegren, that's for sure. I think he's equivalent to a Liljegren, so I think that those two deals should be similar. And like, the guy hasn't played 100 games yet in the NHL, so I guess he does have the upper hand now, with the Leafs being strapped like they are on the back end with the injuries and stuff. But yeah, I hope it would be nice to get Sandin done, like I mentioned. But
For the right
I hope,
price.
Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah.
that's what it's all about with the very little cap space they got. But yeah, we'll see where it goes from here.
Who do you got starting in net on opening night?
In my opinion, I think that the Leafs will start Matt Murray, just because the relationship he has with Kyle Dubas, and he's coming off tough years, obviously, but he's got a lot to prove, and obviously there's guys in Toronto that believe in him. So I think that he'll be the game one starter. But if it was up to me, I would probably play Samsonov, just because at this point in their careers, I think Samsonov has more upside. So I would get him started off on the right foot, give him the opening night start. But like I said, I totally understand why I think that Kyle Dubas will start, or Sheldon Keefe, I guess, will start Matt Murray, just because it makes sense with the contracts and everything. But I think either way, whoever starts game one it'll be good for the Leafs, but I think that it'll be Matt Murray.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you bring Murray in on that contract, and they want to put him to use early. The thing about it is, with him, is you don't want to overuse him as well. So I think a flip-flop early on, and I think caps the Leafs and play the Capitals in the second game of the year.
Yeah, they do.
So I think you'll see Samsonov come back for that game and kind of do like a little bit of a redemption game for him against his former team. So you'll see Murray in game one, and Samsonov in game two. And then they might, who knows after that. But yeah, I agree with that. I think Murray's getting the call on opening night.
What do you have for your forwards there, Fox?
So forwards for the Sens, I got that big top line of ours with Norris at center, with Tkachuk and Batherson on the wing. Next line, I got DeBrincat on the left wing with Stützle and Giroux. And third line from there, I have Tyler Mott on the third line left wing. Now, normally this would be Alex Formenton's place to go, but his contract's not done yet, so he's most likely looking like he's not going to be there opening night. And somebody's going to have to step up and play PK and take on a bigger role, and I think that's where that Tyler Mott signing ends up paying its dividends early. Shane Pinto is going to be the center on that line, and Matthew Joseph's going to be the right wing. I like those guys. Lots of speed on that line. Again, still lots of youth. And then for fourth line for the Sens, it's just a hard-working line. I got Parker Kelly, Dylan Gambrell, and Austin Watson. So those guys are going to be blocking shots and hitting bodies out there. So I think that's going to be a solid fourth line for us. The thing that scares me the most about this forward group for Ottawa, I'm a super big fan of their top six. I'm just hoping they gel quickly. Hopefully it doesn't take that 10, 15 games or so for them to really click, because obviously if we're trying to make playoffs this year, having a good start is going to be crucial. Another thing that I'm a little concerned about is just down the middle. Pinto's really, really impressed me so far, and the guy was a Hobie Baker Award finalist, second to Cole Caulfield, so he's really impressed me so far in preseason as well, but he still has a lot to prove, as does a lot of those guys on the third and fourth line, and specifically down the middle. We don't have a lot of depth, so if there is an injury that happens, that could really derail the season early, which is kind of what happened last year with Pinto's season, at least, where he ended up missing the entire season for shoulder surgery. So hoping, knock on wood, that those guys stay healthy this year, and help us for our push to the playoffs. But yeah, lots of young guys out there still with playoff aspirations, so I'm curious to see how they match up against other playoff teams this year. But all in all, happy with that forward group that Pierre Dorian assembled. I would have liked to see the Formenton contract get done, but I understand that process, and hopefully it gets done soon.
Yeah, honestly, those forward lines sound very solid with those additions that you mentioned. Like, I just think DeBrincat and Giroux and even guys like Austin Watson are going to do so much for those young guys. Like, I think it'll be exciting to watch the Sens on opening night for sure.
Yeah, hopefully DeBrincat and his 40 goals can get us over the hump and get us into the playoffs where we haven't been in 5 or 6 years now. So hoping, fingers crossed, that happens this year for us. Moving on to the Sens defense, I have Shabbat and Zub as our top pair. I then have Sanderson and Hamanich as our second pair. I think that's going to be Sanderson's looking real solid, and I think Hamanich is a great partner for him because you get the size paired with the young guy, so nobody's going to be, running at him out there. He's got Hamanich watching his back and playing a little more defensive as well, too. So let Sanderson, if he wants to go up for a rush, he's got Hamanich back there. And then our third pair is where it gets some question marks. We have Nick Holden and Nikita Zaitsev, who I think are going to be the two that are in the lineup on opening night. I think Brandstrom isn't playing on opening night. I think that he has really looked like he's struggled so far in preseason. He looks small. He isn't winning battles in the corners. And for a small guy like that, you have to make up for it with your offensive upside, and we just haven't seen enough of that from him. So I think he takes the backseat on opening night to those two guys. Now, these top six are the top six that we just think are going to be playing on opening night. They're not necessarily our top six. If you ask me, my top six, I have Jacob Bernard Docker in there over Nikita Zaitsev. But Nikita Zaitsev's got a big contract, so we know we're going to be playing him. Hopefully him and Nick Holden can hold down that third pair. But I am skeptical of how that bottom pair will look, having to match up against other teams' top lines. And again, fingers crossed we don't get injuries, because if those guys have to play up in the lineup, we could be in some trouble as well there. For the Sens, in goal this year we have Forsberg and Cam Talbot. This is honestly the happiest I've been with the Sens goaltending since Craig Anderson days. I know Talbot has had his troubles in Edmonton, but this is still, having him there, a proven guy who is capable of carrying a workload for a team that's made it to the playoffs before, which is where our sights are set this year. This is what we needed, bringing in a guy like that. He's going to provide us with more stability. And for me, though, opening night, it's going to be Anton Forsberg in there. I think it's his job to lose right now. He hasn't shown. He had a really good year last year, and I think that they're going to give him the nod on opening night just because it's his crease to lose. He played well last year. Analytics were really good. I think, but all in all, this is a nice tandem we have this year, and hopefully they stay healthy and carry us to where we want to be.
I think, too, with the Sens, I know a lot of NHL teams are doing this now. It's with the odd exception like Vasilevsky in Tampa Bay or Shesterkin in New York, but I think the the 1A, 1B goalie thing, like similar to the Leafs, is Cam Talbot was very good last year when he had Marc-Andre Fleury there as well. So it's not like, I think that they feel that there's not a lot of pressure. If they're not doing so well, their other goalie would be able to hold them in as well. So I think, I think the Sens are in a good spot with their goalies this year as well.
Yeah, so those are our opening night roster projections for both of our teams. Now we're going to head on to the predictions for where we think our teams are going to finish at the end of this year. I'll start us off. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to run through the Atlantic Division, the top 3 teams there. We're going to tell you the top 3 teams in the Metro, and then I'm going to give you my wild card spots and down the list who doesn't make it, who does. So starting with the Atlantic Division, I have the Panthers in first. I think despite losing Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar, they're still a very good hockey team, well coached, they buy in, and they brought in Matt Tkachuk, so that's never going to be an easy game when you're playing against him. I'm looking forward to seeing him going against Brady more times this year as well, too. Those will be good contests. Number 2, so we have Panthers at 1. 2, I have the Tampa Bay Lightning in there. I think despite with them losing Palat and McDonough, that they still have a core of really, really good hockey players on that team that know how to win games. And with a healthy Kucherov and a healthy Stamkos, you still got Victor Hedman. You got one of the best goalies in the league with Vasilevsky. I think they're looking really solid for that number 2 spot. And in my third spot, this is where I have the Leafs. Mainly putting them at third because I am not sure how their goaltending is going to hold up. And with the injuries at the start of the year, who knows, that could impact them off the hop as well. But I still have them in third. And basically the biggest question mark, is the goaltending for me. That's why I put them there. I think it might cost them a few games this year that otherwise they might have won last year. We'll see, though. So I have them in at third. Moving over to the Metro, I have the Hurricanes first. They're looking really good again this year. They brought in Brent Burns for this year. Good pickup. Second, I have the New York Rangers. They got Shesterkin on the back end in goal, and they got Adam Fox on D. They got Keandre Miller. They got up front. They got a young team who's getting better too with Lafreniere, and so I have them at 2. And then at 3, I have the Penguins. So I think they haven't missed the playoffs in 16 years. So the Penguins are looking good again too this year with they got Ricard Raquel back there. They got all their big guns they brought back. They brought back Letang. They brought back Malkin. Crosby's still there, so they're hungry still. So moving on, that's my Metro there, the top 3. So Hurricanes, Rangers, and Penguins for the Metro, and then Panthers, Lightning, and Leafs for the Atlantic. Moving down to the wild card, I have Boston. I think a lot of people are saying Boston could possibly miss this year. I think they're still a good enough team that they get in. I think that there's a lot of good teams this year. I think that the gap is a lot smaller than what it was last year between that wild card spot and that next team. So I think the Bruins take that first wild card spot. Marchand's going to be back in December, but in the time being, they still got Pasternak. They still got Bergeron. They brought back Krejci. They have Taylor Hall. So they still got a really good roster. They got Hampus Lindholm on the back end for this whole year. So I think the Bruins are still going to be good enough to get in. The question mark that I have with them is the injuries going to impact them enough to make them miss, and how is Swayman going to hold up in goal? Sometimes you see players have a little bit of a sophomore slump, and he was a rookie last year, played really well for them, but the question mark is can he do that again kind of thing. So I still have them in that one wildcard spot. In my second wildcard spot, I have the Ottawa Senators. So I have the Sens in there in that second wildcard spot. And I'm going to tell you some teams that I don't have in. The Washington Capitals and the New York Islanders. Those are two teams that I could see ending up in that last wild card spot over Ottawa. Like I said, I think that gap between those teams is super small this year. So last year, every single team in the Eastern Conference finished with 100 points. And the next closest team was the New York Islanders. They had 84 points. So there was a 16-point difference between the last team and then the team that missed. So I think this year that gap is going to be way smaller. I think it could be within 5 points, and it could be coming down to the last, like 5-10 games of the year. And so like I said, I have the Bruins and the Sens in those two wildcard spots, but the Caps and the Islanders are not far behind at all. From there, I have the Detroit Red Wings, the Columbus Blue Jackets, the New Jersey Devils, the Buffalo Sabres, and then the Flyers and the Habs at the bottom. So going bottom up, Flyers and Habs, I think, are going to see some struggles. They're going to be, I think, substantially lower than the Sabres, Devils, and Blue Jackets, and the Wings. I think that's going to be your middle tier right there. And then you're going to have the teams that are pushing playoffs, which are the Islanders, Capitals, and I think they just miss, and it's the Sens that end up getting in over those two.
Yeah, our predictions are pretty similar. But yeah, just listening to you at the end there, like there's so many good teams in the East. Like you look at the team like Philadelphia or Montreal. Okay, maybe they'll be lower, but teams like Detroit and Buffalo, like I think they're going to be a lot better than they were last year, and it's gonna be some good hockey in the East. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
On my predictions, I have in the Atlantic, I have the Panthers first. Like you mentioned, like Matthew Tkachuk, that's just a huge addition coming in. I mean, I know they're losing out on Huberto now and Uyghur as well, but I think Matthew Tkachuk is exactly what that team's been missing. So I think he'll help them out big time. So that's why I have them at first.
They also signed Colin White too, ex senator. He's going there on a 1-year prove it deal.
That's another good one. And my second team is the Leafs. I think that there is a lot of questions surrounding their goaltending, but I think whether it's Samsonov or Murray, I do think you got to bet that at least one of them is going to have a pretty good bounce back year. So, and I think that they will, no matter who it is, whether it's Samsonov or Murray, I think they'll do well and have be able to hold the Leafs in a second spot in the Atlantic. And then I have the Lightning at third. I know the Lightning still have that nucleus of good players that they've had multiple cup runs with, but I think slowly when you start to pull out the guys like Palat and McDonough, like you mentioned, like those guys, okay, they might not be part of like their core that scores a lot of the goals and is running the power play and stuff like that, but I do think that those guys will be missed. So that's why I have the Lightning at 3. Mm-hmm. And then in the Metro, I have the Rangers at 1. I think Shesterkin is just, he's lights out. And like you mentioned, like Adam Fox, like they've got good young D. They've got young forwards who I think have had a taste, obviously, of what it's like in the playoffs like last year. So I think they'll just be hungry for more. So I think they'll have a great year. And then the Hurricanes. I mean, the Hurricanes have been good for a few years now, and I think they've just continued to get better. I mean, they've got like a good goalie, like former Leaf Freddie Anderson. He's solid for them, and with the injuries, stay away from a team like the Hurricanes. I think they're very solid, and I have them at 2. And then at 3 in the Metro, I have the Penguins. I mean, Malkin, Sid, Gensel, Letang, like the list goes on. Those guys have all proven before that they can do it, and I think that they're getting older, but I really do think that they would have another good year with them this year, and I have them 3rd in the Metro. And then my wildcard teams, I have The first team I have is the Caps. I mean, I think there's been people betting against Ovi for years. Like, yeah, he's going to slow down. He's going to slow down, but he just keeps going. Like, Ovi, I think, can throw a team like the Caps on his back, and they're good. They're a good squad, obviously, as well. And I think that they'll do well. And yeah, I have them in the first wild card spot, and then the second team I have is the Isles. The Islanders last year, they started with so many games on the road, and it's just road games are hard enough as it is. But when you have really long road trips and then you get off to a bad start, it's just so hard to make those games back. So I think that this year they'll do a lot better with a more balanced schedule, and yeah, I think I have them as my second wildcard team. And then a team just looking on the outside, looking in, is the Bruins. I do think that Marchand is like the backbone of that team, and I guess he's not out for that long. They're saying like December, like you mentioned, for his return, but I'm just afraid for them that it's just going to be too little, too late. I mean, they might have a push at the end, but if guys like Pasternak and Lindholm and McAvoy, can hold them in, like I do think they have a chance, and it is going to be tight, I think, by the end of the year. But yeah, I have the Caps and the Islanders in, and then another honorable mention to the Sens. I think they're going to be a lot better than they were last year. Their additions are huge, and I think that they'll be fighting for a spot. But at the end of the day, Caps and Islanders have my last two.
I think that's fair. Like I kind of said, I also it's hard to disagree because I think it's going to be so tight that it really is going to come down to those like last 5 games of the year where anybody could get in, just depending on who's hot, maybe at the end of the year, who's healthy. So we'll see. But yeah, so big differences there is I have the Bruins and the Sens in that wild card spot, and you have the Caps and the Islanders in that wild card spot. So those are the two main differences there. But yeah, overall solid list, and we'll see what happens. We're getting to the end of the show now. We just want to kind of reiterate our giveaway. What it is again is a chance to win these lovely, super comfortable hoodies with our logo on it. Thanks again to Sam for designing that. Super huge thank you, super huge help. Definitely a friend of the show. So again, you want a chance to win one of these hoodies, your choice, white or black as well. All you got to do, 3 things. Go to our YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like our video that we just posted, and share that video on Instagram. So again, 3 things. Go to our YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like our video that we just posted, and share that video on Instagram. But yeah, basically that's it. Let us know in the comments below if you enjoyed the show. Let us know what you thought. Let us know what you liked, whether you agree or disagree. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love the chance to interact with you.
Yeah, I think that hoodie giveaway will be good. So those 3 things that Felix mentioned, they're easy to do. So I think you should go and do that and get yourself a chance to win a really nice hoodie. And yeah, no, thanks for everyone who watched. I mean, and listened as well. We're really excited to get this going, and like we mentioned at the start, like there'll be a few difficulties along the way, but no, hockey's back, and we're excited. That's for sure.
Yep, definitely looking forward to doing this throughout the year. It's going to be a blast. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.